spiritual food for thought.
Welcome back to Spiritual Food for Thought. I thank you for joining me once again. In this video, I'm going to talk about how this modern church tradition makes Joseph and Mary look like incredibly irresponsible parents. It's actually ridiculous if you look at the text and compare that to the tradition and are like, wait a minute, what in the world is going on here? And I think it's one of those things where by their traditions, they make the Word of God of none effect. They don't care about what's recorded, and they probably err not knowing the Scriptures. We're going to look at a couple different things here and how they work together just to make this an absurd picture that the modern church often paints. I plan to dig into this deeper in the future and look at a couple other things about this, but basically what has become the Christmas story, as people call it, is absurd. It really doesn't work. It goes against what is recorded in the Bible, and it also paints these ridiculous pictures like the one we're going to look at. So if we start off by going to Matthew 2, starting at verse 1. Now when Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea in the days of Herod the king, behold, there came wise men from the east to Jerusalem, saying, Where is he that is born King of the Jews? For we have seen his star in the east, and are come to worship him. When Herod the king heard these things, he was troubled, and all Jerusalem with him. And when he had gathered all the chief priests and the scribes of the people together, he demanded of them where Christ should be born. And they said unto him, In Bethlehem of Judea, for thus it is written by the prophet, And thou, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, art not the least among the princes of Judah, for out of thee shall come a governor that shall rule my people Israel. Then Herod, when he had privily called the wise men, inquired of them diligently what time the star appeared. And he sent them to Bethlehem, and said, Go, and search diligently for the young child, and when ye have found him, bring me word again, that I may come and worship him also. And when they had heard the king, they departed, and lo, the star which they saw in the east went before them, till it came and stood over where the young child was. When they saw the star, they rejoiced with exceedingly great joy. And when they were come into the house, they saw the young child with Mary his mother, and fell down and worshipped him. And when they had opened their treasures, they presented unto him gifts, gold and frankincense and myrrh. So interesting thing here. I plan on looking into this more in the future, sharing these things with you. But they're going to a house. They're not going to a manger. And nobody is looking for a babe. They're looking for a young child. We'll compare some things from Luke 2 and Matthew 2 in the future. But here I want you to understand the modern church tradition is that the wise men are there at the birth with the shepherds, with the animals, with the angels, and that they give these presents upon the birth of Jesus Christ. So why would I have a problem with that? Well, let's look at something here. We're going to just grab one snippet of this Luke 2, starting at verse 21, and it says, When the 8 days were accomplished for the circumcision of the child, his name was called Jesus, which was also so named of the angel before he was conceived in the womb. And when the days of her purification according to the law of Moses were accomplished, they brought him to Jerusalem to present him to the Lord. As it is written in the law of the Lord, every male that openeth the womb shall be called holy unto the Lord, and to offer a sacrifice according to that which is said in the law of the Lord, a pair of turtle doves or 2 young pigeons. Now here's the thing. We're going to look up where this is written in the law of the Lord, and we're going to see what was actually commanded, because the 2 turtle doves or the 2 young pigeons, that was if you can't do this, then do this. It was a provision made, but it wasn't what was actually specifically first commanded. Let's look that up from Leviticus 12. And this is one of those places where I believe if more people in the modern church had a biblical foundation for their faith and understood at least what was said in the law and the prophets, a lot of things in the New Testament would be a lot more understandable. They would have a better frame of reference for them, and then a lot of the church traditions would fall flat on their face. A lot of their study Bible teachings would not be held because people would have a foundation for their faith. But here in Leviticus 12:1 it says, And the Lord spoke unto Moses, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel, saying, If a woman hath conceived a seed, and born a male child, then she shall be unclean 7 days, according to the days of the separation for her infirmity, she shall be unclean. And in the 8th day the flesh of his foreskin shall be circumcised. And then she shall continue in the blood of her purifying 33 days. She shall touch no hallowed thing, nor come unto the sanctuary, until the days of her purifying be fulfilled. That was just mentioned in Luke 2:22 when it said, And when the days of her purifying according to the law of Moses were accomplished, they brought him to Jerusalem. Okay, so this is 40 days after the birth of Jesus Christ. 40 days later. I want you to keep that 40 days in your mind as we continue here. In verse 5 of Leviticus 12, But if she bear a maid child, then she shall be unclean 2 weeks, as in her separation, and she shall continue in the blood of her purifying 66 days. That would have been 80 days, but we don't have to worry about that because Jesus was a male. And when the days of her purifying are fulfilled for a son or for a daughter, then she shall bring a lamb of the first year for a burnt offering, and a young pigeon or turtle dove for a sin offering unto the door of the tabernacle of the congregation unto the priest. Okay? The commandment was not bring 2 turtle doves or 2 young pigeons. The commandment was bring a lamb and a turtle dove or pigeon. And then it continues, Who shall offer it before the Lord to make an atonement for her, and she shall be cleansed from the issue of her blood. This is the law for her that hath borne a male or a female. And if she be not able, this is the part I want to point out here. This is 40 days after the birth of Jesus Christ. And if she be not able to bring a lamb, then she shall bring 2 turtles or 2 young pigeons, the one for the burnt offering, the other for the sin offering, and the priest shall make an atonement for her, and she shall be clean. So, I want you to specifically understand this. If the modern church tradition is correct, Joseph and Mary are incredibly irresponsible because somehow they have gifts presented upon the birth, and 40 days later they cannot afford a lamb. And you might think right away, well, from our modern point of view, well, not everyone keeps sheep, right? Well, right. Do you really think everyone who didn't keep sheep kept pigeons or turtle doves? Okay? This is something that if they did not have of their own to offer up the best of what they had, or whatever was qualified of what they had, then they would have purchased it. But Mary and Joseph could not afford a lamb. That's why they had to offer up the 2 turtle doves or 2 young pigeons. So I want you to think about that. How do you blow through the gold and the frankincense and myrrh in 40 days? That you show up 40 days later and you can't afford a lamb. That's what we come to. If this whole modern church tradition of, it looks nice as a nativity scene, people put it out every winter for their Christmas things, just a whole bunch of unbiblical stuff going on, and then taking things from the Bible and kind of cramming them together because it looks nicer, because that's what our parents did. It's not true, it's inaccurate, and then you run into things like this. And I know some people are probably going to think like, oh, well, it was presented to Jesus, so that was for him. It wasn't put in a 401k account or some sort of trust fund for him or saved up for his college education, okay? And I can prove that from Scripture. Look at John 7:15. And the Jews marveled, saying, How knoweth this man letters, having never learned? They're surprised he could read. And they were amazed that he understood these things, because he wasn't educated. These days we put education very high. If somebody's a doctorate of something, or some professor, some sort of degree, these things are held in high esteem. Not so with God. God doesn't need that. So I do want to in the future hopefully compare and show why, more reasons why, I guess, that just the whole Christmas story doesn't line up the way that it's often presented. And I think that it's wrong to present it the way it's presented because it's full of things that aren't true. So if you're trying to encourage other peoples to believe you, like the lost, and that you have the truth, and then they show up mostly at Christmas and Easter, right, which are unbiblical, and then you have these people come in and you expose them to a bunch of things that aren't true, I don't think that's going to help the cause. of winning souls and revealing the truth unto them. And also, I have a hypothesis about how some of these things could have come into play and how they could have worked out very well. You may be able to think of it yourself. I'll be back with a future video on that. But basically, if these things were presented at his birth, how is it that 40 days later, his parents can't even afford a lamb? If gold, frankincense, and myrrh were given unto the family at that point, it makes them seem kind of ridiculous. And I don't think that's a good picture to paint. So hopefully you understand where I'm coming from in this one. Hopefully that makes sense. If you have questions, comments, or concerns, by all means, leave them in the comment section. If you've watched all the way to the end, I thank you. Be blessed. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.